For my stats project, I decided to focus on the lifespan of sharks. So my topic started off with, something super general, sharks, and then it got me thinking lifespan of sharks. And then I went on to narrow down that topic, because it's pretty broad, to the lifespan of the great white shark in the ocean versus captivity. Upon looking for different data sets to get my information from, I decided to narrow it down one more time and do the lifespan of sharks in captivity, and then narrow that down to two specific types and do the lifespan of whale sharks in captivity versus great white sharks. So for this study, originally was inspired by the book The Devil's Teeth by Susan Casey, which is a story of a journal editor who travels to the Farallon Islands off the coast of San Francisco, which is a marine sanctuary, where she learns about them studying the great white sharks that migrate there every year. And at the very end of it, it briefly mentions how she was present when they transferred the first great white shark to the Monterey Bay Aquarium in California, which was really impressive until you look at the stats. Most of my information, including the data for my statistics, came from Dr. Henry F. Mollett and his research group at Moss Landing Marine Laboratories. So my hypothesis was, the null hypothesis is sharks in captivity have roughly the same lifespan. My alternative is that the average lifespan of the great white shark in captivity is less than that of a whale shark. Expressed in my following equations. The first one is my null, which has them as equal options, and my alternative showing that x1, which is whale sharks, live longer than x2, which was represented by great white sharks. So some of my descriptive statistics, I only ended up with a sample size of 7 sharks. This was due to the fact that a lot of data on great white sharks in captivity is relative as far as time goes. The charts that I used to collect my data had rough numbers, so like roughly a day or roughly 5 days. So for that, I ended up transferring all of my data into days instead of months, because it gave a more accurate representation between the two styles, or the two types of sharks. And I only ended up with 7 sharks to keep the numbers matching. So here you can see in my histograms, it breaks it down into how many days the sharks lived in captivity. And although they look fairly similar in a histogram, we can clearly see based on the numbers to the side of each of them that they are drastically different sets of numbers. So in this, we do hypothesis testing. I decided to do a 2-sample test as I was pairing the great white sharks versus the whale sharks. So in doing this, I chose a relatively low significance level of a 0.05 paired with a confidence interval of 95%, which gave me my results. I ended up with a test statistic of 3.2655 and a p-value of 0.0171. So this off the bat goes ahead and shows me that my p-value is still less than my significance level, which generally means that I'll reject my null hypothesis. But looking further, we can see that in my confidence intervals, I have whale sharks having only a lower limit of 464.08 days over the great white shark having 21.33 days. An upper limit on the whale sharks ended up being 2,685.35 days, and the great white shark upper limit ended up being only 158.10 days. So in this data, you can see that things just aren't adding up between the two sharks. They definitely have different lifespans in captivity. So in the end, I ended up rejecting the null hypothesis. The small group that I used to show this showed that unfortunately great white sharks don't live long in captivity. And if I were to go ahead and further study this, I would expand on the different types of sharks and their different species and how they live and how long they live in captivity. I would also want to research why great whites don't live long in captivity. I'm still not entirely 100% sure on why not. And then definitely to, circle back to what my original thought was going to be, was captivity versus the ocean. And here you have my references to the two different spots I got my data from.